The Honourable Ralph Regenvanu, Vanuatu's Minister for Climate Change, Secretary General, Pacific Islands Forum, Excellencies, Heads of Missions, and members of the Diplomatic Corps, heads of regional organizations and crop agencies, government officials from across the region, members of civil society, representatives from academia, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Bula vinaka and good morning to you all. Especially overjoyed to see some of my students here from USP days who are now attorneys general, legal counsel to your respective countries. I'm quietly proud. And very good to see you all here as well. It's a pleasure to join you all at the outset of what I am confident is an important week for the region. We are here to reflect on our way of life, and it is ever so vital that we embrace the foresight needed to safeguard our people and our region from the undue harm we face. Before I move on, I wish to acknowledge the traditional landowners upon which we sit. The Pacific is not just on the front line of the climate crisis, we are also the front line in the effort to shape and define climate justice. The moral authority we have is an important burden, and one that we continue to shoulder and share as a region and as a family. Though our contexts and needs differ, we share in our experience of common challenges. We struggle to mitigate and address those growing threats and fundamental need to secure climate justice and achieve social and intergenerational protection at a time of global insecurity and geopolitical strife. Last week I was in Lambasa, which is in Vanuatu, for a number of ministerial visits. It included site visits to 2 relocation sites, the sites of Nambavatu in Maduata and Dongea in Bua. These communities and many others highlight not only the unique scale of disruption and loss our people face, but also their continuing resilience in the face of a crisis they did not cause. This resilience, however, has its limits in the face of impacts that are only set to increase with time. Under conservative estimations, in Fiji we could be facing a loss of 0 to 2.6 degrees of our GDP annually due to sea level rise if major interventions are not made. All over Fiji and the Pacific, our lived realities speak for themselves. Communities are grappling with more frequent and intense flooding events. Farmers are dealing with changing rainfall patterns, increased temperatures, and reduced crop yields. Coastal and river communities are already seeing erosion, and flooding change the very nature and stability of the land they've occupied for generations. Fisherfolk are returning to shore with empty nets and damaged livelihoods. But we are not only victims, we are leaders. Fiji is not standing still. We have made national, regional, and international commitments and are working to implement these for the benefit of our vulnerable communities. Fiji joins the 138 other nations that have submitted their 3rd nationally determined contributions, NDC 3.0 to UNFCCC. The NDCs serve as the blueprint in achieving our Paris Agreement commitments. Therefore, it sets out ambitious conditional and unconditional commitments across key sectors of energy, waste, agriculture, and other land use, adaptation, ocean priorities, and loss and damage. In Fiji's NDCs, the targets set out have been paired with the mandate and legal framework set out in the Climate Change Act. Thus, it equates our commitment to a full structural shift in the way we approach climate change risk. But like all other small island developing states, we continue to be vocal on the need for simplified access to new, predictable, and adequate climate finance to protect our vision and secure our future, as has been mentioned by Secretary General. We all require enhanced access to emerging technology, capacity, and partnerships that move at the speed and scale required by our people and the most vulnerable communities. This is why we are now working on developing Fiji's NDC Costed Implementation Plan and an NDC Investment Plan. We need to translate the high-level commitments we've set out into actionable, costed, and investable-ready projects. These documents will be our blueprint for ambition and resilience, encompassing a truly whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach to climate action. We know we cannot do this alone. Partnerships remain to be critical to mobilize resources and deliver our climate objectives. Excellencies and colleagues, the focus of this week's event deals directly with the intrinsic link between oceans and climate change. Fiji is a large ocean state, like all our states, and has long been a champion of elevating discussions on the ocean-climate nexus. The ocean is us, and it represents a core connection to our lives, livelihoods, our history, our culture, our tradition, our identity. Fiji has committed to ensuring that 100% of Fiji's ocean spaces are sustainably and effectively managed, with 30% designated as marine protected areas by 2030. We are working to implement these commitments through the Honourable Prime Minister's Ocean of Peace vision. Recent efforts include progress towards development of Fiji's Marine Spatial Plan, as well as development of a national ocean accounting system and approval of Fiji's Blue Economy Framework. These are elements of our efforts in the face of an immense global challenge, and we need to be clear about the scale of the challenge we face. We now face high likelihood that global average temperature rise will breach the 1.5 degree temperature goal we have battled to embed as a core global objective of the Paris Agreement. The implications for coral reefs are dire, even at current average temperatures. Coral reefs globally are under unprecedented strain, and even incremental increases could tip the balance, lead to conditions that no longer enable these ecosystems to exist. Similarly, in a region facing sea level rise at rates double the global average, we face a scenario in which the ocean that sustains us is becoming a threat to our own survival. While we face this challenge more acutely than any other region, ongoing climate inaction will mean that the existential threat we face will be faced by billions the world over. Ironically, the end result of a runaway climate change scenario is not a world without oceans, but a world without land. The reality is that around 70% of all fresh waters on Earth is contained within ice sheets. Therefore, if this ice melts, oceans would rise by around 70 meters. The sea level rise that threatens us today will threaten the majority of nations in the future if the trends we have set in motion are not disrupted. It is clear that we must continue to fight for pragmatic solutions in a world that continues to gamble our shared future in short-termism and self-interest. Excellencies and colleagues, I also want to recognize that the Pacific Climate Justice and Sea Level Rise Week convenes at a historic moment as has been mentioned by Secretary General. Just last week, as we all know, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution A/80/L.65, which is a landmark victory for the Pacific, as the resolution operationalizes the International Court of Justice advisory opinion on climate change issued last year in July. This win was enabled by years of Pacific-led advocacy and, of course, the voices of our youth. The vote itself was historic. 141 countries voted in favor, while only 8 voted against and 28 abstained. The result reflects a clear legal and political affirmation that climate change obligations cannot no longer be avoided through political theater and strategic delay. The world's highest court has confirmed that states must prevent transboundary climate harm, protect human rights, and safeguard the ocean. For the families in Nambavatu and Dongea, for farmers struggling globally, for coastal communities watching their shores disappear, climate action is no longer just the story of ambition, it is a legal duty. We cannot speak of the victory without singing out the visionary leadership of my friend, Honorable Ralph Rugambanu, Minister for Climate Change, Vanuatu. Minister Ralph, your leadership in steering Vanuatu's campaign for the ICJ opinion, starting with the historic Angus resolution in 2023, has changed the landscape of international climate action forever. The Pacific youth who dreamed of this day, and every vulnerable community will use this opinion to demand justice, owe you a profound debt of gratitude. That is your legacy, Honorable Rugambanu. As Pacific Small Island Developing States Chair, I wish to also acknowledge the collective efforts of our Pacific brothers and sisters in New York and at home. You're truly leading by example. That important work continues this week. We will hear from thematic experts, civil society, academia, youth leaders, practitioners, and many others on how we can ensure a safe and just world for all. To end, I would like to say that we must leave this week not only with knowledge, but with a plan to turn the ICJ's legal opinion into deliverable implications. We have the power to use national laws, regional strategies, and our collective voice to keep the momentum and secure tangible results for our region through the international processes that have, to this point, continued to put process and politics over people, power over pragmatism, and self-interest over science. I look forward to a fruitful week, and I hope you will all engage to make the most of this platform and opportunity. Thank you.